Hey everyone, we're back to go ahead and change up the housing on this iPhone 5S. That's got a few dings and dents and scratches in it. So what we're going to do is actually change this to a green housing, something a little bit different so you don't see a ton out there. So we're going to go ahead and kind of make the change. Got some green parts here for it as well. I'll probably change these to black. I think it'll look better with the SIM slot and the buttons to be black rather than the anodized green color. So some of the tools you'll need, some pry tools to help pry the screen off of the frame. You'll need a pentalobe screwdriver. You will also need a couple spudger or pry opening tools here to help lift up any cables or items that may be glued down. A Phillips head screwdriver and also a flat head screwdriver to pull off some standoffs off the logic board as well. First thing we're going to go ahead and do is make sure we power the device off. Then we're going to go ahead and pull out the SIM slot here. Pop it right out. That'll make it so you can't remove the logic board if you leave that in. Next step is to go ahead and take out the two pentalobe screwdrivers on the bottom. Now, if you are going to be doing a housing change and you're really worried about the details, some things that you should be mindful of, depending upon the phone that you have, is the ribbon cable that goes for the speaker and the charging port. You want to make sure that's the matching color for whatever you have. The pentalobe screwdrivers are silver or black on a device as well. Since I'll be changing this to a black device, I'll be putting some new black pentalobe screwdrivers in. So what I'm going to do is, a lot of people will use a suction cup to remove this screen. I find it just as easy to use a really thin pry tool. If you have this DIsassembly tool, you can use a suction cup. It works well. Just get it started with this. Just be careful not to nick your screen or your frame. And then just put in like a guitar pick or a pry tool to help open this up. Now you want to be careful when you're removing the LCD off this device, as there is a ribbon cable that's attaching the home button to the logic board underneath. So you can give it a pretty good pry, almost a full inch up. But just be careful that you don't pry it too far to rip the screen or rip the ribbon cable for the fingerprint sensor. So got it pulled up, and see, we're just going to go ahead and just slide the device to the left here. There's a little guard here that covers the ribbon cable. Go ahead and pull the guard off. Once that's been taken care of, you can go ahead and detach the ribbon cable just right there. And that will allow you to open the device up. Now we can go ahead and use this tool here to help stand it up. A couple things we're going to do is we're actually going to undo the battery cable first, since we're actually removing everything out of this device. So we're going to be a housing swap, so all ribbon cables, everything down to even the holders that hold the screen in, we'll do that as well. So if I can get my stand here to work for me. So now go ahead and undo the screws that hold down this battery connector here. So just undo both of them, but they're both just a Phillips head screw. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and pull the cover off. I'm going to go ahead and detach the battery just using a nylon tool. Next is to remove this metal shield up here that holds down all the connectors for the LCD, front-facing camera, and the digitizer. Now as you are removing this, what I like to do is actually use a magnetized dry erase pad to hold all my screws down, and I'll write down where they came out of the phone. I would suggest doing that and keeping track of which screw came out of what area, as some of them can be different lengths as well. So be very careful as you're removing the screws out of this device. Now once you have all 4 screws, you can go ahead and just remove this metal shield. That will then give us access to the connectors for the screen. We can go ahead and just pry all of these connectors up. There's a total of 3 we need to do. Once you pry up the one for the LCD, the one for the screen is just right behind it. Be careful not to bend the screen, ribbon cables too much, as it can get a little bit tricky. It can actually make it so it shorts out, so be careful, be pretty gentle with them. The next step is the battery. To be honest with you, I have never taken a battery out of the iPhone 5S, and they've changed it since all the other devices I've done, and I really wish I would have known how to do this, but there's actually a pull tab down here at the bottom, and I'll show you how to do that in a few seconds. The adhesive they've used on this is incredibly strong, and if you try to pull it out, you might rip your battery. Normally I just use this metal spudger here and pry down the sides of the device. It's going to take me a few seconds to get the battery out because of how strong the adhesive is. But down towards the charging port of the device, there's a pull tab. You can actually pull it and remove the adhesive, kind of like a command strip. If you've ever seen that, what you do is pull up the strip, cut it in half, and then you can pull the adhesive down the sides of the device. Now, if you don't have that or you rip it, you can pry it off. Just make sure you use a flat spudger like I'm doing, and be gentle and take your time. You could also use some heat to help remove it. It does make it a lot easier to know this beforehand. This is the first time that I've ever removed the battery out of the 5S, so I wasn't aware, but it would be really nice to have known beforehand. So it's going to be prying it for a good little while here. It needs a flat spudger to go down the sides of the tape. Now the actual adhesive is down the left and right side of the battery in a straight line. So I'm going to try to take a peek behind it and see what's going on. Just slide it down little by little underneath the adhesive on the left and right side. Now this is preferably not the way to do it. You can see the two strips there. The best way to do it is to use the pull tab. Unfortunately, I don't have a video showing that. I know there's some probably out there on YouTube, so feel free to check those out if you're looking for just the battery removal or replacement. If I do another device, I will actually splice it into this video, or at least give a link to show how it should be done. Just go ahead and see if I can't pull it out. You see how deformed the battery is. Normally you could just pull it out right here with the old adhesive that they were using, just that double-sided 3M tape. But this new adhesive they're using is incredibly strong. Getting pretty close to being finished. Make sure you're always aiming your spudger down towards the metal frame and not up towards the battery. You do not want to puncture your battery at all. So just be very careful. If you do puncture it, you can buy a new one. I would not put it back into the device. It can cause serious issues. It could explode even if it is punctured. So be slightly careful as you do this. So I'm just going to wiggle this battery back and forth. There we go. Got it removed. Just going to reform it here. Now you don't have to save the adhesive. In fact, you won't be able to save it. And you can just use some 3M double-sided tape to readhere it. I'll show you that in my reassembly video. It's not in the end of the world if you don't follow the correct procedure. So you can see all this white sticky tape in here. Random new adhesive. It's almost like a command strip where you pull on it and take it off the wall, those sticky picture holders. I'm going to go ahead and pry up the ribbon cable down here towards the bottom to actually give us access to some screws. We're also going to pry up a connector for a wire connector here that goes down towards the bottom. That right there. Now truly, since we're doing a full disassembly, we're basically going to take out as many screws as we can. We just need to remember where they go back into the device. We're going to undo a few more ribbon cables here, the power volume here at the top, and the camera as well. A little bit of adhesive here. I'm going to go ahead and put aside. I'm going to undo the screws down here at the bottom of the device. These are all Phillips screws. Like I was saying, I suggest making a diagram of where these come from so that we can always put them back in the correct location. And sometimes if you don't remove them immediately as you unscrew them, they'll pop out. And if you have carpet, they can be incredibly difficult to find. Going to work on prying up the speaker here. We're going to go ahead and pull back the cable that holds down the home button connector here. This has a little bit of adhesive underneath it, and the ribbon cable folds over onto the metal frame below. So we can't wiggle out this speaker. Sometimes it'll be a little tricky if the logic board's still in place. Sometimes it'll come out. So I'm looking at the flap for the battery adhesive there. See if I can get it a little bit. I don't want to force it out. Sometimes it's easier to remove the logic board first, which is what we may actually do with this device. See if we can get a little bit more leverage with it. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the remaining screws holding the bottom portion in. So all of the screws around the charge port down there, the 4 Phillips screws. There'll be another additional screw off to the left, on the left side of the phone, near the headphone jack. Now I don't like to fast forward into my videos. I want you to see exactly what's happening in the video as I do it. Nothing's been pre-loosened, nothing's been undone. So this is what you can expect when you actually open up your device and how it actually looks before it's been removed and the force and how much pulling has to be done to get stuff off. So I went ahead and changed my bit to a flathead bit to remove this standoff screw. You'll notice they're a little bit different. They're much larger and they stand up a little bit off of the logic board. You can't usually fit a small Phillips screw driver head into them. They will have a Phillips screw spot, so if you have a nice flat one you can use it. I find it easier just to use a flathead screwdriver. We'll undo the next screw within the logic board, the next one up, down the left hand side. Make sure you keep track of where these came out of the board at as well. An additional screw off to the right, near the SIM slot. An additional screw up to the left on the opposite side of the SIM slot. A barrel connector up here at the top, a standoff screw, so we'll go ahead and remove that using the flat head. An additional screw just right here next to where the power button connects. Look to see if I've missed any. Go ahead and just try to pull it up. Seems a little bit loose. We have an additional screw up here at the very, very top of the device. Go ahead and work this logic board out. Now before you start to try to just rip it out, try to wiggle it back and forth a little bit. There is a wire connector that holds it down to, I think it's the Wi-Fi antenna here. You'll need to flip the board over and disconnect this before you can remove the board out of the phone. Now with that being done, we can go ahead and work on the cable down here at the bottom. There is some adhesive that holds down the cable towards the charge port area. So we're just going to use a nylon spudger to give it a little bit of prying. That loosened up our speaker. We can go ahead and set that aside. And we can pry on the cable here. Let's pull it up. See if we have got all the screws out that are necessary to remove it. I think I might still have one in here that's located underneath a connection here. Additional screw. Just to the right of the 3.5mm headphone jack, right above where the battery sits. Try to wiggle it a little bit more and see if we're missing any additional screws here. Remove this shield just to check to see if there's an additional screw under there as well, which there is not, doesn't look like. It's got some additional adhesive down here, so I'm just going to use my nylon spudger and wiggle it just a little bit back and forth to kind of loosen that up. Then we can wiggle and pull straight back and up a little bit, and that'll give us to loosen up the device. You can see that there's some additional washer things here. Now that we have that removed, we can go ahead and set it aside. You can see we have a speaker port here, a little foam grill. We're going to pop up these washers. Make sure we know exactly where it came from. We can make a diagram of it to make sure we put it back in the device the correct way. Now don't fret, I do have a reassembly video coming up as soon as I get my black power buttons for this. I'll post that, so if you are disassembling your phone to do this housing change, I'll show you where all the little pieces go back in. Wiggle the rear facing camera out and some adhesive here. Go ahead and set that aside. Now we're getting down to the bare parts of the phone. Not a ton more to take out. Alright, so the remaining screws are all going to be Phillips, it looks like. I have an additional screw holding down the ribbon cable right here, so go ahead and remove that. Right here at the top as well. There's a little shield. You can go ahead and remove that as well. Go ahead and start to pry up the ribbon cable. Be nice and gentle with this. There's so many flanges to it, so many arms to it. This is an all-in-one ribbon cable that goes to the sensor, to the power button, to the volume button. It all interconnects, so be careful as you're using this. We have an additional screw right here that holds the power button trap door. We're going to go ahead and undo this screw here as well. An additional screw here. Undo this additional screw for the power button. I'm going to go ahead and pull back the trap a little bit here for the power button. The ribbon cable loops underneath the button, and there's a little door that's attached to a hinge on the right hand side. We're going to try to remove the cable from the hinge. Sometimes you can remove just the whole hinge assembly, and that's the easiest way to do it. So we're going to go ahead and just remove the power button itself and set that aside. That'll give us some additional working room. I'm just trying to use my spudger here to get underneath the cable adhesion to pull it off of the little door. Let's go ahead and wiggle it back and forth. See me pulling it back just right there. Sorry, I went off camera just a little bit, but all I'm trying to do is the cable is adhered onto the door. I'm just trying to remove the little piece of cable that's still attached. I'm going to try to use a dental pick, see if I can't get underneath it. It wraps around the underside, so if you can start on the top. You could use a razor blade as well, but you want to be fairly careful since this cable overlaps on top of itself. We might try to give us some additional playroom here, so try to pull up the cable just a little bit. See if we can't get the door to open a little bit further for us. Just being very gentle. I'm not using a lot of force. I'm just sliding this down as the adhesion pulls up off of the housing of the device. Power button's still stuck in there. There we go. We went ahead and removed it now. So you can see the button just right behind this door here. I'm going to try to sneak my dental pick in and try to pry the button off of the hinge. Probably one of the trickiest parts is this cable right here, is getting it out of the device and then back into the device. Doesn't always want to work exactly like it should. Now, I'm being very gentle with this, which is why it's taking me so long. I don't want to rip the cable. If not, then I have to wait to get a replacement. So, doing my best just to try to pry this cable off of the hinge door here. Sorry for moving the device off camera. When you get a little bit tense, I pull it towards myself a little bit more. I get frustrated. Alright, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give that a break. We'll see if we can't get some more leverage. We're going to take off the volume side first here. There's a little kind of a connector that holds down all the volume buttons. The volume button and the mute button are all connected under one ribbon cable. There's a little metal housing here. We're going to see if we can't pull this back. An additional screw up here that holds the mute button connection on. See if that'll give us additional play to get this thing removed. Just going to pull back on the mute button area. You see that came ahead and pulled off for us. Just going to go down and try to pull back on the volume button, which did pull off for us as well. There's some adhesive underneath the cable, so you want to be gentle as you're pulling this back. You don't want to rip the cable, so just pull it nice and slow with a firm grip. There's our mute button. An additional screw here that holds down the cable up towards the vibration module. We're going to go ahead and undo all the screws that hold down the vibration module as well. Clip for the module. Go ahead and set that aside. An additional screw up towards the top here. There goes the vibration module. Go ahead and set that aside. Now we can go ahead and pull the cable up towards this top portion a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and try to pull up the connector for the vibration module here at the top. Just slide my pry tool underneath it and be very gentle. Then I can pull this cable down towards the power button. Give us a lot more slack and play room. That'll let us pull up. There's a little bit of a connector here. There's a volume up and down button. There's a little bit of a connector portion that prevents the hinge door from coming back all the way. Now this will give us the slack to make sure we can open it a little bit more, get more access to it. So pry up as much of the power volume cable you can here. It kind of bridges underneath and then towards the camera area. Just pull that little bridge area up. That'll let the door, the hinge, swing open further and give you a little bit more access to it. And then it popped off for us. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. double checking the cable to make sure that it didn't get damaged in removal. So it kind of folds over itself like this. It's a fairly complicated cable, so try to pay attention as how you took it out to how it will go back in. The volume area here as well. If you're trying to replace the cable itself, you will need to peel the volume button off of the metal housing, as well as the power button from its metal hinge, and then use this applied adhesive on the new cable to go ahead and put that back on. If we're just changing the housings, you don't have to do this step. We'll just go ahead and reuse this exact same portion in the new device. Sometimes you can buy a cable and it has all these things adhered to it already. That may be the easiest way to do it. Here's a little hinge for the power button. Now the next step that we need to do is go ahead and remove the Wi-Fi antenna. And here's the battery flap I was talking about. Basically, you pull on it right here at the top of the battery. You can see how it pulls the adhesive off. You just pull on it. You can cut it in half and then move it down the side. See how easy that would have been for me to remove the battery? That's why you watch the tutorials first. Well, as I make them, I try not to watch other people's. Alright, now unfortunately my camera cuts out for a second. It takes me a minute to realize, so I may do a couple of steps. Next goal is to remove the Wi-Fi antenna here. Just use your pry tool to go underneath. Be very, very gentle. There's a lot of adhesive under this and it's easy to rip this cable. So be nice and careful as you're pulling it up. It does loop around some of the screw connectors, so make sure you pry those up from their connection point first. And here's where my camera cuts out on the recording. So really what I did is I removed the Wi-Fi antenna, and then that was the last cable inside the device. And then down the sides of the device, all the connections, I just removed this portion right here, the Wi-Fi antenna, and then any connections or screws and ports that were down the sides of the phone that the screen clips into. Here's the cable that was removed, just from right here. And if you want to see the parts that I removed, I'll just watch the beginning of the reassembly video. It'll show it. Really what it is down the left and the right hand side of the phone. There's two screws just right here that screw in that holds down the LCD screen. It looks just like this. You need to remove all of these out of your device, and they'll need to go back into the new device to hold down the new screen that we're putting in the device. There's a few of them. They're on both sides, so make sure you remove all of those. And that is the only thing my camera didn't catch. We're just going to look at the device and see if there's anything in this one we want to transfer over. Just the little grates down here at the bottom for the speaker, the microphone area. Just going to transfer these little dust caps over, and a little rubber grommet from this side. Make sure that everything is 100% perfect once we start to reassemble this device. Be nice and gentle as you're prying these out, as they are easy to rip. can go ahead and transfer this into the new portion on the bottom side of the phone. Try to clean it out a little bit. This is a dust cover, so it does catch a little bit of dust as well. Alright, we got everything removed and taken off from one device to the other. I'm pretty excited about this transition. Customizing this iPhone. Kind of be cool to do a couple of them, different colors. See if we can't maybe theme them. Little bit of a grommet here. We're going to move and transition to the other side right next to the camera. Let's double check and see if there's anything else in there. Alright, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you want to hit the reassembly, I'll throw it down in the description once it gets finished. Like I was saying, I'm just waiting on my black power button to come and my volume button. That way I can get started on this. If you found it helpful, hit the like button. And as always, thanks again for watching.